Good afternoon. Welcome to Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone. I hope you're enjoying this beautiful, hot Wednesday. We have an exciting show for you today, but first off, did you enjoy your 4th of July? Because I've not been with you since the 4th of July. Let me just say my boys grilled for the first time, and they did an outstanding job. It was very difficult for my husband to take a back seat to the young men in our home, but he did do that, and let me just say they did really well, and I think I gained a few pounds because of it. Having said that, today's show, we teased it on Facebook, and I'm excited about having Les Smith here in the studio with us. And I know that you know who Les Smith is with Fox TV, Channel 13 here in Memphis, Fox Memphis. And he has been with that station over 8 years, but been in the market a long time, veteran reporter, anchor, and has covered some of the top stories in this market. And what we're going to talk to him about is we want to know what you think. Do you think that the media treats African American elected officials differently? Some people think that they do. Some people say no, they don't. But we want to know, what do you think? So Les is going to be with us for the first 30 minutes of this show. So if you have any questions or comments, give us a call at 527-2413, 527-2413. When we come back, we'll begin our dialogue with Les Smith. So stay tuned. You're watching Dialogue with Deidre.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.
Welcome back to Dialogue with Deidre. I think, my dyslexia might have kicked in. The number to dial is 527 2414. I think I said another number because I was thinking about which station Les represents. Les, welcome to Dialogue with Deidre. Now, everybody go to Facebook, and post your questions or comments or give us a call at 527-2414. Les Smith, welcome to Dialogue with Deidre.
Thank you, my favorite ex-commissioner.
I know. Whenever he calls me,
Yeah.
is this my favorite ex-commissioner? I am so glad you're on the show today.
I'm glad to be here, and especially when we're talking about, what we're going to talk about.
I'm telling you. So I guess the question is, because I think that's the perception out there, is that the media has it in specifically for African American elected officials. What are your thoughts on that?
I think to a degree, I think that is true. And we were talking about it before we started here. It has a historical perspective. White people had ruled forever in government, especially in Memphis. We know Boss Crumper, we know the legendary stories, all of that. Of course, when Willie Harrington came on the scene in 1991 and the first African American ever elected to the city as mayor, there was such joy and elation, and that in itself may have escalated into a fallacy. The belief that somehow because we elected black officials and a black mayor that our life was just going to be better here.
Everybody's going to be rich. Everybody's going to have major opportunity.
Jobs
right.
And all of that. And we were wrong. Because this was a situation where, like anything, it takes time to make change and for change to settle in. But I think we put too much stock into color when we should have been thinking about the character of some of the people that we've elected since that time.
I agree.
I
absolutely agree.
Yeah, and so yes, I think that because of that feeling, that as journalists sometimes we hold black politicians to a higher standard because they are representative of a city that is 60% black, whatever, as opposed to 40% white. So therefore, they are in government. We are everywhere. But because of what's happened, because the expectations have not been met as many people thought they should have been, I think that's why, yes, we do hold them a little more in scrutiny and in the light than what we do. Because we tend to write off sometimes, we'll just write off white politicians. We'll say, oh, well, they're bigoted or whatever. That's just so-and-so. That's just so-and-so. But no, we tend to hold our black politicians and their feet to the fire.
And I think that's because the expectations are so high. I think, Les, and I'm not sure if the viewers know, but I used to be a news producer for a local TV station here and in radio news. And I remember when Dr. Harrington was elected, because I remember taking my oldest son and my youngest son, who's 23 now, in the booth. And I remember a lady saying to me, "Do you want me to hold your baby?" I'm like, "No." I want him in here with me when I push, the button in support of.
Yeah.
And so over the course of time, you hold them to a higher standard, specifically if you're an elected official who is African American, and then you're a journalist, you're supposed to be unbiased.
Yes.
That's your goal.
And that is your goal, to be unbiased. I'm an equal opportunity offender.
Yes, you are.
I've been told that, and that kind of makes me proud. I mean, a lot of the things that I see, sometimes I poke fun at, because I know a lot of people don't get into politics, and they'll see, okay, it was a county committee meeting here today, or there was a city council meeting here today, and they're almost there at 6 o'clock, when they're almost ready to turn that TV off. Well, I've heard this before. So that's why you have to approach them and give them a different angle, almost a tongue-in-cheek angle of this is what went on. Focus in on something that if you were there, man, you should have seen that. And there always seems to be that moment, whether in council or whether in the commission, where, oh, wow, okay, we're going to put this on. There's no doubt to that. But, it's fun, and I try to make it fun for the viewer. But, at the same time, to give people a serious perspective of how we got to where we are, or how people got to this point, why this vote took place, and what was behind that vote. And sometimes that gets pretty deep and pretty serious, but I feel as a journalist that's what I'm supposed to do.
That is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to report the news and accurately. Without bias.
Without bias.
There's nothing wrong with a little commentary every now and then.
Nothing wrong with a little commentary, and I'll make a little plug for our station, because I think that we do more in terms of politics than any other station here, because we try to give you in-depth stuff. We bring on the newsmakers and we talk to them, and our reporters too. You have to have a knowledge of what you're reporting, and so a lot of times we are debriefed as reporters, and I think that adds to the credibility, and it adds to the giving you the total overall focus of a piece or a story. You got to know what you're talking about, and you've got to make people believe that.
I want to also give Fox 13 a plug too, because you do a lot more in-depth types of pieces, and then having people come on regularly to commentate on what's happening, not just locally,
right,
but in national news.
Yes, in national news as well, because it is one of the things, and I'll give a shout out to my news director, Ken Jobe. He came in 10 years ago. He's the longest tenured, by the way, news director in town now. And he came in 10 years ago with a philosophy, and that was to tell stories. And then that broadened into, why don't we get into issues? Because nobody else, there's a void in this market. That you look at television, and its reputation has always been, well, minute 15, VOSOT, 15-second soundbite here, and then that's the only depth that they give you. Well, he came in with a philosophy based on his background, that we can do more than that. We can give you a story. We're not going to tease you. We're going to have half this story at 5 o'clock and half this story at 6 o'clock. It's not fair to the viewer. You give them a whole story, however long it takes you to tell it, and keep it together and be true and don't drift off track. Then you got all the time in the world to do that, and I appreciate that.
He's a good guy. I did not have an opportunity to work with him. They tried to keep me at that other station, and they tried to entice me with the fact that Ken Jobe was coming to that other station, and I kept saying, but I've got to go.
The time has come. I must move along.
I have to move along, but I've gotten to know him over the course of I guess I've been out of the business now.
Don't date yourself.
Wow, 18 years.
18 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
10 years in business, and 8 I was with. It's been longer than that. It's been 20 years, because I was with St. Jude for 10 years.
Yeah. Right.
20 years I've been out of the business.
Well, I've been here I came here in 1983, and Mason Granger hired me.
So you were at the other station.
I was at that other unnamed
station.
evil empire.
No, where I used to be.
Where you used to be. I was there. Yeah, I was there in 1983, and I remember quite vividly walking in as Myron Lowry was walking out.
Really?
Yeah, he was suing that unknown station. But that's it. That's another story in itself. But no, 1983, and I came here, and of course, it was culture shock coming from West Palm Beach. My sons at that time, I was married, of course, my first marriage, and my sons were, I think, 6 and 7. Yeah, 6 and 7.
So they grew up in this
market.
And
they grew up here. And I remember after 2 years, I was not all that impressed with Memphis, and I had offers from Atlanta and Dallas, both. And I came home, and that was in the days when reporters really didn't have to sign contracts. It was kind of more or less a handshake agreement. They signed anchors for contracts, but not reporters. And so I came home, and I said, hey, guys, it's time to go. Dad's got a new contract ready to go. All I got to do is sign it. We're going to Atlanta. And they said, well, why? We like it here.
Oh, no.
I like going to school. The kids like going to school here. The wife at that time got a theater job with the Theater of Memphis. That was her degree.
Right.
And, all right. Well, and now they're going to bury me in Elmwood, probably. I mean, it's been that long.
Because you're not leaving. You're not leaving.
No, this is home now. This is my home.
Well, and we're glad you're here. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back. You're watching Dialogue with Deidre with Les Smith.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.
Welcome back to Dialogue with Deidre. Les Smith is my guest today. Les, let's get into this. Okay, so African American elected officials.
Yes.
Media does treat them a little differently, in your opinion.
Yes.
And why is that again?
And again, it is the reason is that we tend to expect more out of them because they are more representative of the electorate that they represent. And so, yes, there is an onus upon such officials. And certainly this recent budget situation, both in the city and the county side, show up kind of what we're talking about in terms of the scrutiny that's placed. When you look at the city side, you wonder, in this case, I think Harold Collins came off the best of anyone, although I will give Edmund Ford Jr. a lot of credit too. His plan, along with Collins' plan, were pretty much along the same lines.
Okay.
And they showed leadership. You know, Edmund Ford Jr. is a young, up-and-coming leader. He has a great mind, and he's one of the few people that actually puts cohesive plans on the table.
Well, doesn't he have like a PhD in mathematics?
He does. And
very
so
smart young man.
He's a very smart young man. So his numbers are truly based on knowledge and working with that. I think Harold has a feel for people. And so if you put those things together, you've got two outstanding men there who you know every time that something comes out of their mouth that it's going to be meaningful, okay? Certainly, you have the older warrior in Myron. He's a sage and a wise man. He had the flexibility and the sageness in this last budget to flip some things around, to see where the winds of change were going, and he went that way. My only thing is that I don't like to see from a personal aspect, and I guess it's a reporting aspect. I don't like to see those who just walk the walk and don't talk the talk.
Right.
And unfortunately, sometimes in that category is where you find Joe Brown, is where you find Wanda Halbert, and sometimes Bill Boyd as well. People who, they say we can't cut employees, we can't do this, we can't do that. Well, give me something that is workable. Give me a plan that we can advance and work with. And speaking of working with, why don't we start this whole process a lot earlier?
A lot earlier.
Than what we do.
And then work with, I understand that there is truly a divide between executive and legislative. But if you're representing the same people,
that's right.
Maybe there's an opportunity to come together and have a conversation about what this budget should look like.
Yes.
And then not wait until the mayor presents, his or her budget.
Yes.
And then with that, you shoot it down. It's not what you want. Then you have your alternative budget when you can go through the process together.
Yes. We're all in the same game.
All in the same game, having a conversation with the mayor, letting the mayor know what's important to you. He or she's letting you know what's important to them. And then you have a budget that maybe everybody can be happy with.
Yeah, and exactly right. And we talked many times before about just putting your egos and leaving them at the door. And we don't see enough of that. People who come in with their own personal agendas. And what they may point out, say a guy like Terry Rowland, we know how bombastic and all that he can be. But there are some things that he is right on. I think one of the issues was the amount that we secure in paying lawyers for the county and for the city or whatever. A staggering amount of money for outside and legal experience. But because of his boisterous bullying style, that argument gets lost. And I can point out other people that do that same thing. But it is all about being able to connect. And our disconnect is when you look at the people who come out and vote, and that total gets lower and lower and lower every year for every election that we have. That shows you where that disconnect is. They want people who represent them. We sent you there because we believed in you. We believed that you were the guy that was going to watch our best interests and be there and do all these things. And then all of a sudden you get elected and you're talking about what you want to do. And that's wrong.
I can tell you, it's funny when I'm out and about, and I may be in the company of current, county elected officials or appointees. They'll walk up to me and say, "We miss you on the commission." Mm-hmm. And I remember the CAO of the county walking up to me, not once but twice, saying that, "We miss you." And I said, "But if I were here, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing." I have to remind them of that because there are term limits.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember early in this commission's term when we saw that it was going to be very confrontational, so to speak, that a commissioner that served with me called me and he said, "Deidre, what can we do? We need to figure out how we can work together." I said, "Just keep talking."
Yes.
Keep trying to get them to see the value that there is something to be said about decorum.
I remember when you were on the commission, and that was a commission that got things done. And you guys may not have loved each other, but when you were there, you were respectful of each other. You could be collegial at one moment, but then be firm on the next. And it was, when I watch Walter Bailey, who, bless his heart.
Just a statesman.
Yeah, statesman. But in this particular commission setting of people, I just watch him and I see the sorrow in his eyes that he has come back to this of just incredible contentiousness and personal attacks. And he must sit there and just wonder, why am I putting myself through this?
Oh, I'm sure. I remember, and we can talk about it now because I'm no longer elected, but Steve Mulroy and I were going after it over the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that,
Oh,
Les?
yeah, I do.
I was the chairman at the time, and I had an opportunity to appoint committee members to determine whether the county was going to keep the pyramid or sell it to the city of Memphis. And Commissioner Mulroy didn't think that I could be unbiased and I said, yeah, I could.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, big squabble about it, but we didn't do that really, quite frankly. It wasn't as much of a public debate. I had other commissioners who defended me. I didn't go round and round with them. But I was always professional when I hit that gavel.
That's right.
And, if he had a proposal that made sense, I would support it. But when I hit that gavel and the meeting was over, we couldn't have a conversation because I was mad at it.
Yeah, exactly. But when you find yourselves, and you're a politician or you're someone, an elected official, when you feel that temperature gauge rise, disengage, and think about the issue and the issue only. And then after it's over, go out and, as Willie said, why don't we go out in the street?
I remember that. I was sitting at one of the conference room tables and he and Brent Taylor are close now.
Yeah, exactly.
But when he invited him out to the parking lot,
that's
and
right.
I was sitting there saying, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah. Oh, it was something. But if you get, again, you're gonna go, if you're gonna walk the walk, talk the talk and all that. Well, do what you say you're gonna do. That's what people out there, I think the people who elect people, the voters say, just give me somebody who's honest. Give me somebody who is consistent. Give me somebody who really believes in this city and wants this city to advance more than his own personal agenda. And I'll elect him and I'll believe in him.
You think that's what it's going to take to get those voting numbers up?
That's the only thing. You must restore the public trust. The public trust in the system and how it works, Shelby County Election Commission.
Right.
And you must find that right candidate who is truly the guy who really sees the whole picture.
Do you think the media is forgiving of African Americans who kind of fail the people? There are a number of comeback kind of kids.
Yeah, there are comeback kids.
Ricky Pete, who I adore.
Pete, certainly. John Ford. We're all interested in knowing what's ahead for John Ford, because I'm sure that whether or not that ethics situation, whether or not that applies to him, the state ethics laws, or whether they're retroactive or whatever, that'll be interesting to find out. Certainly, Ophelia Ford's tenure is coming to an end in the state Senate. That's going to be interesting. Who'll jump in that race to see what's going to happen there. Yeah, just like I think the American public in general is forgiving of people. It just takes time, and then how they posture themselves after they leave office. If they are if they are remorseful for what they did, if it was a criminal act or whatever, or shameful, yes, it tends to be that way. I always remember Richard Nixon,
right?
Who ended up being regarded as a statesman at the time of his death, despite Watergate and all its problems. But yeah, there is room for redemption, and certainly the media is among those who always loves a good comeback story.
Loves a good comeback story. Loves a good comeback story.
Pull out all that old file and relive it all over again.
All the hairdos.
All the hairdos.
The big lapel jackets.
The big lapel jackets and the disco colors and all that stuff. Oh yeah, but it certainly is. If I had picked for myself some other profession, I would never have been as happy as what I've done. I've done this for 30 years. Started in Jefferson City, Missouri, back in the middle 70s. And it has been a fun ride of people and places and events. And it continues to be so. And I tell my wife now, and she says, when are you going to retire? You're 63. You get that, take that money and run.
Don't do it,
And
Les.
I said, well, as long as the feet hit the floor,
That's right.
every day, and they want to move, past that, move on, then I'll do it.
You've got more stories to tell.
Yeah, more stories to tell. I think so. I hope so. Certainly, there is no greater place than this place for stories. And when you think about Memphis, you think about Mississippi, northern Mississippi, and the untold stories that are in eastern Arkansas, or the Boot Hill of Missouri, which I've gone all around and over, and so many stories still untold.
Absolutely.
And that's what keeps me going. That's
Well,
for sure.
let me tell you, we're going to have you come back. The next big story that hits, that you cover, I'm going to call you and say, hey, Les, I need you just to come in for like 10 minutes and talk about it.
I'd be more than happy to.
Thank you so much for being on Dialogue with Deidre today.
I
know you've gotta
my
run.
favorite ex-commissioner.
Thank you, Les.
There you go.
'Cause
And soon to be
know-
my favorite. Well, we'll talk about
We'll talk about that later. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're watching Dialogue with Deidre.
stfranciser.com saved me a lot of time. I injured my back one day at work. I went online and I filled out some info. I went to the hospital, in and out within 30 minutes, and it saved me hours.
No one likes to wait. At the St. Francis ERs, you can reserve your place online and be seen within 15 minutes of your designated time. Hold your place in line. Go to stfranciser.com.
This is your life, live it well.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.
Welcome back to Dialogue with Deidre. I'm your host, Deidre Malone, and I so enjoyed having Les Smith here to talk about African American elected officials and how the media treats them differently, because there is a perception that they are treated differently. And Les gave his opinion on why he thought that was the case. And I can tell you that being a former elected official, and I just so happen to be African American, that you are under, any elected official is under a microscope. People are watching you because people have entrusted you with handling their business when it comes to government. And so you should be held to a high standard. But in the African American community, because of historical reasons, how at some point we didn't even have the right to vote, that we look up to, and we have, at least we used to, have a great deal of respect for our elected officials that that we should continue to have today. But I know that there needs to be a reason. And so I can talk to you about here in Memphis, in the state of Tennessee, one family that is known for creating solid elected officials. A few of them have gotten in trouble, but is the Ford family. And I want to show a historical photograph of them, and that's back when Joe was wearing his hair to the side. I served with Joe Ford, who was a county commissioner and ended up being interim mayor, and then we eventually were in a primary for Shelby County mayor. But that family is kind of the Kennedy family here in Tennessee, specifically in Memphis. And when Congressman Harold Ford was elected back in the early 70s, I mean, Memphis was on fire, so excited about the opportunity of him representing us in Washington, D.C., and then he served and then went on, and Harold Jr. was elected to Congress. And so the Ford family has a service, a history of serving this community, as well as James Ford. James was elected to the city council and then went on to serve as the chairman of the county commission. Joe was elected to the city council and then moved to the county commission. And now the next generation, and then Ophelia Ford, who replaced John Ford in the state legislature. And John was probably one of the most powerful elected officials in the state of Tennessee. And then, of course, we all know he got into a little trouble and went away, but it's my understanding that he's back home now. But Republicans and Democrats alike would talk about the power that John Ford had, and how if you wanted to get something done in Nashville, John Ford could get it done for you. And so this family has a history of public service. And I can tell you now the next generation is serving. You have young Justin Ford, who is on the county commission and was a critical vote on Monday against the tax increase. And it's my understanding that he is proposing his own budget that he's going to submit to the commission. And then I think Les and I talked earlier about Dr. Ed Ford, and Ed is the current chairman of the city council. And so the Fords have been around in this community and have been serving for a long time, and they've done a great job, and that is a part of our Democratic history specifically. And so let's also talk about some of the elected officials on a national level that as of late gotten in trouble, and it's unfortunate. Another family that has a long legacy of serving is Jesse Jackson Jr. I mean, his dad, everybody knows Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was and still continues to be a major civil rights activist in this country. He walked with Dr. King, and we were all so very proud. As a native from Chicago, very, very proud of Jesse Jr. continuing the legacy of service. And representing Chicago in Congress. And then his wife, Sandy, was able to be elected to the city council in Chicago and was an alderman. And it's so sad to see what's happened with this couple. Both of them have young children, and it was just reported today in the New York Times that that they're looking at how to sentence the both of them so they won't be in prison at the same time. I think that Jesse Jackson Jr. will be sent to prison for 4 years, and his wife Sandy for 18 months. So they're looking at trying to figure out how to stagger those terms so one of them can be at home with their children who happen to be 9 and 13. And so I guess my question, and one thing I want to throw out and see what your thoughts are, because the phone's not ringing today, but you might have a thought that you want to post on the Dialogue with Deidre Facebook page, or email me at dialoguewith@deidre@deidremalone.com. And if we don't get your question answered or read your comment today, we'll make sure and we do that next Wednesday. But then Kwame Kilpatrick, who was a young African-American mayor of Detroit, up and coming. And Kwame got into a little trouble, and I think Kwame's already serving right now. Kwame's in prison right now, and his mom was an elected official, if I'm not mistaken, in Michigan as well. And so, you know, those of us who believe in service can sometimes be tainted by the actions of others. And I just want our viewers to know that, you know, people are human and they make mistakes, quite frankly. White elected officials make mistakes. And so, you know, everybody's prone to make a mistake. It's what happens when you're entrusted by the people with this very sacred trust. You know, when you make a mistake, you apologize, and if you happen to become incarcerated, you pay your time, you do your time, and then you come back. Someone is actually giving us a call. Hold on for 1 second. Welcome to Dialogue with Deidre. You're on the show.
I was wondering if you could talk to...
Hold on for 1 second. We can hardly hear you. Uh-oh, I think I hung up on you. I'm so sorry. Trying to make sure that if you call back, we'll let's try this one more time. You're on Dialogue with Deidre. You have a comment?
Go about getting people involved, really involved in this. And like, if you don't know how to get involved, how do you do that once you know what candidate you want to pick?
I cannot hear you. We're having technical difficulties. Hold on for 1 second. Dr. Hutchinson is in the audience, and he's going to see if he can help with my technical difficulties over here. Can you say something real quick?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine now, Doc. Thank you so much. I can hear you fine. What was the question?
I was saying, okay, like with the upcoming election coming up, how can we get more involved once we know what candidate we want to support? Because, like, you know, I already know, you being a black woman, you know, I want a black woman in the capacity that you are going to serve as county mayor. I want somebody that reflects and looks at me and looks like me and is interested in doing the things that are going to help me and my kids. Well, but how do we go about getting involved and helping to do that on a, you know, on a I guess a ground level when we may not be, you know, corporate leaders or business leaders or whatever. We're just local people. How do we help?
Well, thank you so much for your call, and that's a very, very good question. First thing I want to say, I appreciate your comment about supporting me in my candidacy. But what's most important to me is that you really do your homework on who I am, what I'm about. And so when you're out and you're talking about I support Deidre Malone, I want to make sure that you say I'm not just supporting her because she looks like me, She's an African American female, but I'm supporting Deidre Malone because she believes in, making sure that we have the funding to support our children when it comes to education, that she has a strong value system and speaks to the fact that everybody deserves an opportunity to have some type of health care, and that everybody deserves an opportunity to be protected in their neighborhood. And so how do you do that? You learn about your candidates. And most candidates today are going to have some type of website that gives you information about them and then also gives you an opportunity to sign up to volunteer, to walk and knock on doors and tell people about the candidate of your choice, to be able to make those phone calls and try and keep people engaged or get people engaged about what's going on with that candidate. And so I invite you to go to DeidreMalone.com, learn a great deal about who I am and what I'm about, and then there is a form that you can submit where I can get access to your information, and we'll definitely be calling you to see if you want to get involved in the campaign. And I truly, truly appreciate your giving me a call today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate you too.
Thank you now. So that was a good call. And, again, as I was saying, people make mistakes. And the African American community in general is a forgiving community. I mean, if you look at how back when O.J. Simpson was on trial for the murder of his wife, the African American community came to O.J.'s defense, and when he was acquitted, the African American community embraced him. And when my good friend Ricky Pete was incarcerated and came back out and was reelected, I mean, the African American community embraced him. Ricky was an educated man, and he made a mistake. And the people saw that when he was on the city council, he first was on the school board. When he was on the city council, he did great work on that city council. And the people that served with him had a great deal of respect for him. And then he made a mistake. And so, it is the constituents' responsibility, quite frankly, to hold elected officials accountable. Let me just say that when I was first elected, I wouldn't take a credit card because I realized that, I had my own personal credit card, and if the county needed to reimburse me for something, that they could. But I didn't seek any reimbursements for anything because, of course, it's a part-time job and you're being paid a part-time salary. You had specific parking, you get preferential treatment in a lot of instances. And so, as an elected official, you can't let a lot of that go to your head. It's easy if you're the type of person to let that go to your head, but you shouldn't, because you were elected by the people to go there and do a job. And with that, you're supposed to do it well for them, and you're supposed to sit there and think about how they would want you to represent them and then vote accordingly. And so, sometimes we forget where we came from, but the best way to remember where you came from is for the people to let you know. And I'm telling you, they will let you know. Your constituents will hold you to a higher standard, and sometimes you don't need to do that, constituents, because you need to remember that the only way that they got there, the only way they became elected, was because you put them there. And there's nothing wrong with reminding them of that. Nothing wrong at all. And so with that, I want to talk about the fact that we've got a number of things coming up because I only have about 5 minutes left on this show. And this on next Friday, July the 19th, from 8 o'clock until 2:30 at Hanley Elementary School. There is an opportunity for you to help build the Hanley students' playground. It's called the Kaboom Playground Build. And so the Hanley Elementary leadership is looking for volunteers to come out and put some equity and sweat into helping them build this great new playground, because school starts in less than a month. And so with that, we want to make sure that the elementary students in the Orange Mound community at Hanley Elementary have an opportunity to have a brand new spanking playground. And so if you want to participate, you can call Aspire Public Schools and they can give you all of the details. But you may want to just show up that Friday from 8 until 2:30 and help build a playground. It'll be great. And as a part of that, I just want to mention that on our show next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about preparing for when school starts. And a couple of the guests that'll be on the show will be the founder and president and CEO of First Class Montessori, Evelyn Hibbler, and her daughter, Erin Parrish. Both of them run the First Class Montessori schools here in Memphis and in Cordova, and they're going to talk to us about what you should do to get your child ready for school. And so they've had a great deal of experience doing that. Evelyn's owned First Class Montessori for, I know, at least 20 years. At least 23 years, because my youngest son was a student when, like, probably the second class. So she's been around a while, and the Montessori process is a great process. And so for your preschoolers, people getting ready for kindergarten, you're not going to want to miss this show. And let us know what you think about Dialogue with Deidre. We want to hear from you. You have an opportunity to post that on our Facebook page, which is the Dialogue with Deidre Facebook page. You also have an opportunity to just email me directly at deidremalone.com and let us know what you think about our show. You know, at this point, you can view our show through our website, mutv1.com. You can view our show through Justin TV, and you can view our show through Facebook TV. And we're really excited about the programming on mutv1.com. And so we want to remind you to stay tuned and be supportive of this African American television network, because we are here to serve you, and we want to bring you programming that you want to see. And that's the reason we try to come up with, specifically on Dialogue with Deidre, topics that are timely, that are reflective, and try and make you think about what's going on in your community and what you want your community to be like. So we thank you so much for watching our show and being supportive of MUTV1, and we look forward to seeing you again next Wednesday. So we appreciate you, and again, I'm your host, Deidre Malone, and you've been watching Dialogue with Deidre. We'll see you next Wednesday.
The Carter Malone Group is a full-service public relations agency. Celebrating 10 years of being in business, the Carter Malone Group is located in Midtown Memphis and represents clients across the country. No matter what size your business, if you are interested in promoting your product or service and increasing your market share, contact the firm that can help you meet your goals. The Carter Malone Group. Call 901-278-0881 today.